Hi, and welcome to Bob Akmens Sports, America's #1 top sports handicapper since 1978. This is the first of two parts of our football betting tips video. In this first part, we'll talk about college football and maybe the single most powerful betting angle in handicapping it. We'll also touch on coaching in the college ranks and in the pros, and then we'll move on to discussing the mentality of NFL players. And finally, we'll cover the significance of bye weeks in the NFL as a handicapping tool. I'll leave these headphones where they are instead of putting them on. If I do that, I'll just look like Nancy at Time Life Books taking your order. Thanks for visiting our website, basports.com, to see what Bob Akmens Sports is all about. Let's talk a little bit about some of the challenges you may face handicapping football. Bob Akmens Sports actually handicaps and releases plays in 4 different kinds of football: college, NFL, arena football, and the Canadian Football League. Since 1978, Bob Akmens Sports has finished in first place in 68 different categories of documented college and pro football handicapping contests. You can find a complete list of those number ones by clicking on the Documented #1 Titles tab on any of the pages on our site. Each of those 4 sports play football, but every good handicapper should approach each a bit differently. Let's talk about those differences. College football involves intense, emotionally pumped up young men who, while they may be subsidized with special favors while allegedly attending college, still have one ultimate goal in mind: some sort of shot of making the pros. Of course, there still are such things as student athletes, and guys who go to really top-notch schools like Stanford or Duke or Northwestern usually are there because they're bright people who also happen to be good athletes. But realistically, those are the exceptions and not the rule. The vast majority of college athletes are not rocket scientists, nor should you expect them to be, and they operate on a very instinctual level rather than thinking things out, which may not necessarily be a bad thing, especially if you're faced with what appears to be an impossible task, like coming back from 3 TDs with a few minutes to go. An intellectual type of quarterback might reason that this is just not possible, and even if he does so subliminally, might fail at his task. And you and I have seen that happen on every level of football, college and pro. So in a situation like that, you'd much rather have a Joe Willie Namath throwing for your Crimson Tide team than a guy who might be a smarter person but doesn't have the instincts that Broadway Joe had. There is no sport where the factor of revenge plays a bigger role than in college foots. In college hoops, a revenge match will be one of maybe 3 other games a team will prep for in a given week. College football rituals often take on an ancient, pagan-like aspects. When a school has a pep rally and builds a huge bonfire and students chant, "Just replace their clothes with animal skins and you're back in 10,000 BC." Coaching is often the common thread in the continuity of success or failure of a college team. It's usually a much less important factor on the pro level. One of the strongest college football plays you can find is a revenge game coached by someone who excels in just that situation, avenging a recent loss to an opponent you play with some regularity. I recall discovering this angle with Terry Donahue back in the early 80s. He coached for 20 seasons at UCLA from 1976 through 95. And sometime back in 81 or 82, I noticed the positive correlation of going with the Bruins in any revenge game where UCLA had lost to a team they had played the prior year. When I first jumped on that angle, Donahue was 8-1 against the spread in his last 9 such games. And then the Bruins went on to cover 9 more in a row over the next years. You can bet I released UCLA for every one of those 9 straight wins, which ran his revenge game run over those years to a remarkable 17-1. Now, NFL football is a different beast. You simply don't see the same intensity level from week to week from a pro player that you do from a college player. And the reason is obvious. The pro has made it to the top of his profession and may be signed to a multi-million-dollar contract. So just to survive in his jungle, he has to pace himself a bit more than a young college kid. What should be formful often isn't in the NFL. And upsets occur with more regularity than you'll see in college ball. So you might want to look at more dogs than favorites when the woofers are live ones. One important angle to look for in NFL games is how teams do after a bye week. Most do quite well, but you have to look at their prior performances, which may very well be a result of how their coaching staff approaches things. If you find a team that's covered a good majority of the time right after a bye week, chances are quite good they'll do it again for you. Now on this note, we'll close out part 1 of this video. Please watch part 2, where I'll tell you why both Arena Football and the Canadian Football League are maybe even better money makers than betting college and NFL football. And we'll talk about the most challenging games to handicap in football. Thanks for your time, and make sure you watch part 2 of this video, which, if you follow its advice, will make you money. This is Bob Akmens signing out for now. Thanks for visiting.